The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Paranormal Concept right here on Parasearch UK Radio with your host, Paul Brook.
Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Concept Show. My name is Kerry Greenaway and unfortunately Paul is on holiday this week, so I've taken the helm and I've invited into the studio a really good friend of mine, Mr. Gary Bradfield. Good evening, Gary. How are you?
Good evening, Kerry. I'm all good. It's dark now, don't you know?
Oh, the nights are drawing in, aren't they?
They certainly are. Yeah.
And it's a full moon tonight.
Yes. Very full moon.
Looking beautiful.
Yeah, I've got a black shade, so I can't exactly see it at the moment. So I shall go out later and have a look.
Oh, it's definitely one to have a look at, I have to say. Now, tonight on the show, we're going to be talking about... Well, we're going to talk a little bit about psychometry and then we're going to go into haunted paintings because this is a fascinating topic, as always. And also, not just that, but Gary's been doing an experiment which he's going to tell us all about very, very soon. So, let's start off with psychometry. What do you make of psychometry?
I think there is a theory in it. I've been blessed to actually work with somebody that was heavily into psychometry, and I watched the gentleman work, and I would say he had a 95% accuracy rate. So, yeah.
I have to say, psychometry is basically where you hold an object or you touch an object and you get vibrations and impressions from the object, and you're supposed to be able to get a reading off of it, aren't you, from where it's been and who's owned it and, you know, the history surrounding it and that sort of thing, isn't it?
Well, that is, yes. You know, as I said, I've actually watched the gentleman work and he was very good. But I have tried it. I have had vibrations off of them, but whether or not I haven't delved into it myself, let's put it that way. As much as I'd like.
I have had a go. I've had a go more with jewellery than with anything else, to be fair. And obviously working with crystals and minerals, I can link into the energy through those. But as I say, I've had a go. Interesting results from those. But again, it's a bit like when you do a reading with somebody, isn't it? If that person's receptive and they're open to what you're saying, you tend to get a lot more yeses, whereas if they're closed and they're blocked, then they'll be like, no. It's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But what I like, obviously, going back to this gentleman that I worked with, he would go into a building on our events, and he would go up to old antiques, and he would touch them, and he would get no information from the owners, and then he would go and see the owners afterwards and speak to them. So he had obviously no prior knowledge. He would then go and speak to them. And as I say, he had must have been at least 95% accuracy rating.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It does seem to be a thing at the moment in the paranormal field, the haunted object thing, not so much jewellery, but all types of haunted objects are coming under scrutiny, or alleged haunted objects, shall we say, are coming under scrutiny, and people are using technical equipment to try and record that. What do you make of that? Because I sit on the fence a little bit with this one, because whereas I think you can tune in on an energetic level, whether or not you would be able to record that, I find that a little difficult to get my head around, to be fair. Because you're not recording the actual item itself, are you? You're trying to record a spiritual activity surrounding the item.
Well, with technical, it's awkward, isn't it? How can you actually, well, things that we're going to be talking about, haunted paintings, how can you actually put a thermal camera on a haunted painting, so-called haunted painting, and then get registered off of the thermal camera? You're going to be picking up the heat from the room. The painting should really stay constant, a constant temperature. But if you're talking statues and things like that, then yeah, you could, obviously, by putting CCTV cameras around it and see if it moved.
Yeah, see, that's sort of, if it moved, then yes, you can look at it. But there was a really famous case in one of the museums in, I think it was the Natural History Museum, if I'm right, where every night a particular statue would move on its axis, and there was no obvious explanation for it. They couldn't work out why this object moved, so they put it down on 24-hour lockdown with CCTV cameras on it to see what was happening with this particular statue. And they actually recorded it moving. Well, when they really dissected that, what it turned out to be was it was very, very slightly on the base. It wasn't dead flat. So when it was sat on its base, it wasn't sitting square to the base, which they didn't realise. And it was ever so slight. It was like so slight that no one had recognised it before. And as the trains were going underneath the museum, it was causing a vibration, which was causing it to move.
That was.
But this would happen over a 24-hour period, so they had like the traffic throughout the day with people coming and going. Obviously, in the morning, the person would go in and was it in the Midlands, Mark? Yeah, I know. I'm doing that from memory. I know it was a statue, and every morning the guy would go in and straighten it up. But all day it's had the traffic from people and obviously the underground and stuff like that. But then overnight, it would look like it had moved more, but it was over a 24-hour period. And that was just down to vibrations. So that wasn't paranormal at all. But it was, to start with, they all thought it was paranormal because why would it move? But it was because, really simply, the base wasn't 100% square to the dias it was sat on. And it was something really, really simple like that. But it took a 24-hour surveillance and really dissecting the environment, quite frankly, to work out what was actually going on with that particular statue. Now, we've seen a lot of feeds going on the socials recently, on all different, loads and loads of different people are doing it. So it's a bit of a thing at the moment. And it's all set up, and you've got REM pods and you've got K2s and God knows what else surrounding the object, trying to, capture some form of recording, I suppose you would go. And everyone's commenting, going, oh, I'm sensing this, I'm sensing that. But with objects and paintings, we're going to get into the painting thing a bit further on. Do you not think that people always will have some form, particularly with something that's been suggested that's haunted or given a basic history of a horrendous history, they will have some form of emotional connection to that in the first instance before any tuning in? I'm using air quotes on that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's face it, if you were to take any object and you start saying, it's this, it's that, it's this, eventually, even if you're in a group of 5 people, 2 people are going to take that on board.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then those 2 people, it's the pyramid effect, isn't it? You tell a group of 5 people, and 2 people then take that on board. Those two people then tell another two people about it, and then you've got four people, and then you've got, see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
It's literally a pyramid effect. So you can imagine in 6 months of someone just saying, oh, my ashtray moved last night. Within 6 months, your ashtray's haunted. And you haven't said nothing. All you've said is my ashtray moved last night.
Yeah, it's that leap of assumption. So how much of the environment is suggestive to our psychology then in regards to this particular situation? I mean, another thing that's really around at the moment is the haunted doll phenomena. Dolls are a little freaky in their own right to start with, but you just label it with haunted and straight away people make a connection to it, don't they?
I mean, again with dolls, you buy an ordinary doll, right? Mm-hmm. You paint that face, make it look horrible. You can stick it on eBay. It's not even haunted because you've just bought it out of the shop. Mm-hmm. You stick it on eBay with a horrible, grossly looking face, burn it if you want with a, it's a haunted doll. People go mental. You watch the bids go up on eBay. They'll go through the roof.
And there are thousands as well. There's not just like one or two. There are thousands now.
Yeah. This is it. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that every object that you see isn't haunted. Okay?
No.
But, come on.
I think you have to be very discerning. If you're going to go looking and buying a haunted or a doll that's said to be haunted, you've got to be very discerning about it. Or an object, forget dolls in particular, but an object, you have to be very, very discerning. And just because it may have a gruesome history or it may have a story behind it, doesn't necessarily make it haunted.
No.
And what you could be picking up on isn't necessarily a spirit attachment to that object. It could be just the energetic memory that you're linking in regards to psychometry. So what you're picking up on is actually the energetic history. It's not an attachment. It's just that, I don't know, energetic memory that's lingering.
It could be the memory of the people that touched it.
Yeah.
If I was to say to you, or give you a doll that I just bought, and again, we'll go back to the doll theory, I've painted it and burned it. And I've said to you, here, Kerry, here's a doll. Huh? Blah, 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 blah. Give you a load of history on this doll. And you go, wow, this doll's haunted. You pick it up and straight, I'm not saying you would, but straight away you're thinking this doll is haunted, and you're then putting your energy into that doll.
Well, when you think about it, if we look at it from the doll perspective or an object perspective, if you've got, we'll look at it, we'll talk about it from the doll perspective. If you're a young child and you've loved and, played with this doll endlessly and it's seen you through good times and bad times and you took it everywhere with you and it's got your, I don't know, if we go back to DNA and all that sort of stuff, it's got your life source on it because you've loved it and that. And then you put it in a box because you outgrew the doll. And then 10 years or 20 years later, you get rid of it into an antique shop or a second-hand shop or a boot sale or something like that. When the next person that comes along and takes it, they may well be picking up on that rather than it being a spiritual attachment.
Yeah.
Or
you could go down the other route of when suddenly mum and dad have taken that doll away because they think you've outgrown it. And the child's traumatised that Teddy or doll has been taken away. Mm. That's going to go into that will go into the doll or Teddy. So, it's really, it's all theories, isn't it?
Oh, it's all theories. Yeah, we can't prove any of this.
This is what I like about the paranormal.
This is one of the things that we both love about the paranormal, is that you can talk concepts and talk to somebody else, and they'll bring something new to the table, and that makes it fascinating. And I do like the work people are doing in regards to this. I'm not dissing anybody for doing that kind of work with these objects, because I find it fascinating, but I kind of sometimes wonder the point of some of these experiments, when you know that, first of all, you've already got that in your head about it supposed to be haunted. You know a basic history of the object or doll or whatever it be, and then you start getting possibly phenomena surrounding it. It then that's what I find interesting about the whole thing. Now let's talk about paintings, because that's really why we're here tonight, is we want to talk about paintings, but we wanted to talk a little bit about psychometry, and we also want to talk about energetic impressions on an object, because paintings are a little different, because very, very rarely do you hug and love a painting. They hang on a wall. There's something you look at, there's something you admire, there's something that you get an impression from, and you know, before you know anything really about it, you can go to a gallery and look at a painting, and you will get you personally will get a response to that painting, regardless of whether or not you know the painter or the history or anything. You will get some form of response to it, and you can have 20 people look at the painting, they get 20 different ideas about that painting, but it will always evoke some form of emotional response within yourself.
Yeah, agreed.
Without that knowledge of history. Now, if there's people in the painting, if they're looking directly, if they've been painted so they're looking directly outwards, those eyes are going to follow you in a room.
Yeah, definitely.
And that can be quite disconcerting, depending on how the painting has been painted.
Well, it's the concept of the painting, as you said, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The way the artist at the time has actually painted it, and as you say, when we decided that we was going to do this on painting, I had a quick scour, and as we were chatting earlier on, he sort of like do a bit of research, and it never panned out because I got rather busy. But I've actually had a look at a few paintings, and a lot of them are like the Crying Boy, where it's the full face, and all this. Now, most of them, the reports, as you said, most of the reports that come back is, I was looking at the painting, and then I moved away, and the eyes followed me, and I was very scared because the eyes followed me. Well, come on. As you said, go into a gallery, look at any painting, and the eyes will follow you. It's one of those things. It's not paranormal, not in my mind anyway.
No, I'm with you on that. I mean, I went to a gallery in Canterbury, and there was a painting on the wall. It was huge, actually. It was massive and beautifully painted. I couldn't tell you who painted it, but I wanted it. Not the massive painting, obviously. Well, yeah, you know, if I could have had that, I would have, but it's a bit big to get onto my coat, you know. So I bought a print of it, and I've still got it to this day, hanging in my hallway. I love it, right? And I don't know why. Just something about that painting, I adore it. Okay. Now, people come in, and some people really don't like it. And there's nothing bad about this painting or this print of this painting at all. I never got a feeling about it when I was there. It was just a painting I really, really liked, and I wanted a copy of it, and I bought it. But some people get an emotional response. They go, I don't like that. And she's a pretty little girl standing in a doorway. And that's effectively what it is. It's 1700s it was painted originally, but the print obviously is paper. But it still evokes that emotional response in people. Now, when you look at something like Ness has said in the chat room, the famous one, the Scream.
Oh, Screaming Man.
That's right. Yeah, that has got a whole backstory to it, and it's supposed to evoke people were supposed to have committed, or he was supposed to have committed suicide while he was doing it or something, wasn't he? If I remember rightly.
It was supposed to have been painted in the artist's blood. And when I think, if memory serves me right, once he actually finished it, he then committed suicide.
Now that's right, that was originally done by Munch, wasn't it? A guy called Munch or Murch?
Something like that, yeah.
It was a long...
Yeah.
I think it was that. But that reminds me of the Anguished Man, which we've had... we've talked about people... we've talked with people before now that worked with the Anguished Man. But it reminds me very much of the Anguished Man.
I think they're both... I did not get my wires crossed, and it's the Anguished Man that was painted in his blood.
Wasn't that supposed to have... it was supposed to have had blood pigment in it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the Anguished... Brain sizzled on a Tuesday night, and I've still got X amount of days to go before the weekend. I was thinking it was the Anguished Man. I'm pretty certain of it. And I did have a picture of it, and I haven't got it now. This is about typical.
Well, the Anguished Man was the painting that John Blackburn worked extensively with before it got returned to the owner.
Yeah.
And we all know the history that John has had with that particular painting and has gone on from that, which we're not really going to go into tonight because we have discussed that before on Parasearch. But when you get that kind of image in front of you, incredibly evocative, emotionally, it's going to hit you at some point on some level emotionally. Now, on a psychological level, if it's hitting you emotionally at some point, it's not a nice image in front of you, surely it makes you uncomfortable, doesn't it? It makes you... It's a bit creepy. When you look at both of those paintings, whether it be the Anguished Man or the Scream, they're very...
Yeah.
They're uncomfortable looking at. That's not something I personally would want to hang on my wall.
No, I wouldn't. Definitely, no, those two paintings, I would say, when you're looking at them, straight away, you're going to be thinking, well, what's their history? And even before I knew about the history of the run that John was doing, associated with, and you just looked at it, it brought out that, I wouldn't say fear, but it brought out that anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly wasn't fear, it's like, well, I'm not too sure about, not as you said, I don't think I would like to have that hanging in my house.
No. So if you're working with that kind of painting on a very, very, or trying to work with a painting like that on a very deep psychic level, that's not going to it's not going to bring up cosy, nice little images, regardless of whether or not you're psychically connected or not, is it? It's going to bring out the worst kind of deepest, darkest fears, particularly if you do know the history as well behind the artist who painted that.
Well, yeah, if you've literally got the history, you're working with something like that, the history is verified.
Yeah.
It's a bit, you go, me personally, you're going into dark places that you don't really want to go.
Very much so. I mean, even down to somebody who doesn't... I mean, I know he was an impressionist, but something like a Picasso. Yeah, if you look at some of his imagery and his paintings, again, they're not... his mental mindset wasn't very stable.
Very true.
So when he's painting, that's being reflected through his paintings.
Yeah. I mean, for an artist to paint, no matter what they paint, their emotions at that particular point in time are going into that painting. So, and you're going to be picking up on their emotions. really.
Because that's how they've translated their emotions onto paper in the same way as a writer, how their mental mindset is at that time will reflect through their word, the way they word stuff, the power of the word.
But the weird one is that it is still to do with paintings, obviously, but it's the Crying Boy, which was, you go back, which I think it was in the 1950s when it was painted. It might have been even before that, but it doesn't really matter. But the painting itself wasn't, they said, was not haunted. It was the prints. They took a load of prints off the painting, and in 1985, supposedly bad things started to happen with these prints. The houses were being burned, the fire brigade were going in, and these prints of the Crying Boy were still on the wall, not burnt at all. So Ace Brigade, even the fire brigade, wouldn't have the Crying Boy painting in their own houses.
No, that actually was something the sun blew up. There have been a few house fires. Now, bearing in mind, at the time, the electricals in people's homes weren't like they are today.
Exactly.
And we didn't have the fire retardant materials that we have today. But the process of the printing used a fire retardant varnish on the painting, which is one of the theories as to why they weren't burning. Now, the Sun caught on to this, launched the story basically saying, if you want to get rid of your copy of the Crying Boy, send it to us and we'll do a mass bonfire, which is what they did. And they had terrible trouble getting it to light because they're all covered with this fire retardant and like resins. But even now, we talk about that as almost a paranormal thing when it isn't. It's actually been explained since. That's something that has been explained since. But back in the day when that was happening, that was a big thing, wasn't it?
It was. There was mass panic. Like, it was mass hysteria. I mean, I was going to say that obviously the prints weren't, but you sort of jumped in with a lovely explanation, because I've got it written down, but it's funny. But you explained it downside better than what I could have done. But yeah, but at the time, people thought it was paranormal.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, in the paranormal world, it's been debunked. And that is why, again, why we, as paranormal investigators, no matter what coming our way, debunk it. I know it's sort of like going off of a tangent here with debunking, but you've got to debunk it.
You've got to look at every possibility. Even there's a really famous saying, and I always forget it. It's like, no matter how improbable the answer is, most probably the answer, or something like that. I'm sure it's a Sherlock Holmesy or kind of thing saying, but it is so true. It's one of those things, and you have to look beyond it's a ghost or it's a haunted thing to see if there is a logical, improbable, possibly, explanation. But you have to sort of look at that, and although that might ruin some of your preconceived ideas of what the paranormal is or how the paranormal is perceived, it actually is quite helpful, because when you do come across something that you have looked at and shown to everybody you know of, and experts in different areas and stuff like that, you can then start distilling it down, going, okay, that's really unusual, we still haven't got an explanation for it. Not saying it's paranormal, but we still haven't got an explanation for it. So we can actually start getting to the point of what is paranormal, if there is anything paranormal at all.
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't know, then obviously, again, everybody's got a small circle of friends that they trust. Also, I'll ask anybody for an opinion.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I'm the same as you. I've got a trusted circle of friends that I'll put stuff towards if I think if I don't know the answer, before I'll sort of, well, not that I put anything out there anyway, but for my own knowledge base, for my own self to try and work out if there is a logical explanation there first, you know, before jumping to the conclusion that it is. So going back to the paintings, when we look at things like that, there is still, to this day, a wariness regarding the crying boy, but which was driven out of a media hysteria, really, regarding that.
I don't, as you said, guys, even to this day, people will not have the crying boy in their own house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been proven without doubt that it's not paranormal, as you said. At the time, they put a fire varnish, which is the easiest way to put it. A fire is just varnish on the painting. And basically, it didn't burn.
Mm-hmm.
But people have still got this concept that it's haunted. But it's not the painting that's haunted, it's actually the prints that are haunted, which is a completely different kettle of fish, as they say.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I do find the haunted painting phenomena more fascinating from a psychological perspective, because I do feel that you are, because of the essence of the painting, it does evoke an emotional response within somebody, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. You know, there are several different versions out there of, I say several different versions, several different famous haunted paintings that we looked at. But let's get on to your painting. I want to talk to you about your personal experiment regarding a haunted painting. So fire away. Tell me about this.
Well, I suppose, if you go, I reckon it's about 2.5 years ago, roughly, I started to get an interest, as we've been discussing tonight, an interest in supposedly haunted paintings. So, I've been looking at them and on the internet, as you do, because none of us at the time would get any closer to a haunted painting than what we would like. Well, that went on, and I suppose a year and a half, I got contacted by a woman, lovely lady. She was a bit difficult on the phone about this painting that she got. So I thought, well, this is my chance. So I felt sorry for her, obviously, because she's now given me my chance to get hold of a haunted painting, supposedly. So off I trots round her house, and basically she's bought this painting from a boot market. Cost her a silly amount of money, you know, a couple of quid. It wasn't in a frame, but as soon as she actually bought it, within a week, her husband had lost his job. They started poo-pooing it, you know, yeah, okay, I'll get a job, don't worry about it, darling, if you do, you know, it doesn't happen. Well, a few weeks passed and he ended up critically ill in a coma. And then other bits and pieces all happened, and enough was enough. He got in contact with me. Because she actually swore blind that this was all to do with the painting. So basically I went round there and I've taken it away. And I've been experimenting with it ever since, and it's, as I say, it's about a year and a half. And it's basically come to an end when we did Landguard for 2 weeks ago. Excuse me. Lady wife is now grabbing her purse. out the drawer. Wrong place to have a studio in the kitchen. Yeah, so basically, I basically had this painting for over a year and a half. I started looking at it, and then I decided I'm now going to take it on events to the public. Well, as I said, about 2 weeks ago we did an event at Landguard Fault, and that was sort of, I took it there, and that was basically the end of the experiment.
So what does the painting look like? Gary?
It's right. The painting looks. The easiest way I can explain it is because you actually look at the painting and you can have it. Can I go up? Oh, by the way, this painting isn't even signed, so I can't even give you didn't even notice you about it. The painting's not even signed by the artist, by the way. But it's done in blues, blacks, white, greys. And if you look at it one way, it looks like a mountain scene with pine trees, and the pine trees are all in black. But if you turn it round, and it's a completely different concept. No matter which, you can't really tell which way the painting is. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, it's a bit abstract.
Yeah, the painting can go any which way. You could have the painting on a diagonal on the wall if you wanted to, and it would still look right.
Yeah.
That's, it's just one of those. Now, I've looked at it, I've had it in my house, I've had it in my bedroom, hanging on the wall. Sharon, she went, Garrett, when I brought it home, you're not hanging it in the house, blah, 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 blah. Well, it's all right, love, I won't hang it in the house, I'll just hang it in the bedroom. You can imagine the response.
I can imagine the response on that one. It's a haunted painting and you're hanging it in our bedroom.
Yeah. So as I say, that's the basics, and all I had was the painting. Never had it in a frame or nothing. I went out and bought another frame for it. What I'll do is, tomorrow I'll take a picture of it and I'll send it over to Kerry.
Yeah, please. Yeah, it'd be great.
I meant to take a picture of it for you anyway, but completely forgot. So, as I say, getting back, I've done experiments with it in the house. I took it to public events. And basically got a load of forms filled out. Haunted painting experiment, please help me, or help the API, we've been given this haunted painting. We're doing experiments on it, we're trying to find the details about it. Any details you can draw from that painting would be great. So, and that's how it progressed. And as I say, I've had it for about a year and a half. And it all transpired, come to a conclusion on Land Art Tour, which was 2 weeks away. Any questions? You've gone quiet on me, Kerry.
No. So you've taken it on investigations and you've got a basic questionnaire saying, tell me any impressions that you get from the painting. So what sort of things are people picking up from this painting?
Let's go for one. We had a woman, the very first time I think it was, or the second time I took it, she sat down and she wrote out her form. But I don't read the forms out when I'm there, or wait till I come home. Mm-hmm. When she got on it, whilst touching the painting, because what I did was I took it in the frame and I did allow them to take the painting out of the frame if they wanted to. That was entirely up to them. She did, whilst touching the painting, I got a bad feeling of depression, dizziness, sickness, very vicious headache, and my K2 meter was going right the way up to the red. She had a K2 meter on the table.
Right.
So that was one. And they're all sort of, and I had another one was, I didn't like the feeling of the painting. I felt as if the artist had committed suicide. So there's one there, but I feel like the artist was a single woman, and it was all sort of, all down the lines of the depression side, you know. And another one there was the artist was a young girl of around about 18 to 20, and she used to self-harm. So throughout the course of the year, I'm getting a picture of what people are actually taking from this picture.
Uh-huh.
So, obviously, throughout the year, when I'm taking the painting to events, I'm then sort of relaying the story of what the woman had told me in the beginning, but sort of putting more onto it, onto the story. Okay, so what started off at the first event that I took it to was a 5-minute talk on this painting. By the time halfway through the year was through, it was like a 10 to 15-minute talk on this painting.
Okay.
So it's growing. So it was really weird. And as I say, by the end of this year, I've now stopped. And the last bit was the Vanguard Fall. Again, it was good 15. I took it up to this room and I had a group of people. We've been doing experiments up there with different bits and pieces. And I said, I'll just get my haunted painting out. If anybody would like to have a touch, feel, and tell me what you can feel on it. Well, they was like, to look at their faces, they're like, okay, like, this looks interesting. The bloke's a nutter, he's brought a haunted painting with him. So I give them this bit of the spiel, as they say, the history. And I actually, the last words I put was, I've been doing this for a year now, the experiments, and I've had my reservations whether or not the painting was haunted or not. I said, but I've now come to the conclusion that it possibly could be. I said, because the event before Vanguard Fall, I was supposed to have taken it with me, but I forgot it. Now this painting is actually hanging up in my house, in my bedroom. There's nobody there because my son stayed away for the weekend. And when I come home, the painting was actually on my bed. Now I know I never moved it, and I know the wife didn't move it, and I know the son didn't move it because he wasn't in the house at the time. The house was completely locked up, there was nobody about, everybody was away for the weekend. Well, these people, from thinking this is a crazy man you're talking to, and you feel they wanted to touch this painting, all backed off. Literally backed off the table. They were sitting at a table, and you know when you sit at a table and you're interested, your elbows are on the table, aren't you, and you're listening intently, they all shied back and literally went into what would do baby mode is used, but their arms crossed, most of them, and I went, right, and I went, if anybody wants to, it's there. And to look at their faces, it was, I'm not touching it, I'm not touching it, I'm not touching it. So basically, that now is the end of the painting, because I think my experiment with the painting has gone to the point I can't take it no further. Now, I would say, because I know what the next question is going to be, I'm going to say, I would say a good 80% to 80 to 90% of the people that actually took part in this experiment have said this painting is definitely haunted. Okay? I would say 9% of the people have said it possibly could be, but I'm not really 100% sure. And I've got 1% that actually got it completely right. And
which is?
I am now going to tell everybody, you've just listened to a load of fiction. Because the painting, everybody thought that whoever thought it was haunted thought it was painted by a female. It was painted by my dad. Okay, my dad's still alive. He never painted it in blood. He painted it in ordinary paints. It was an experiment I did to prove a point that over a period of time that psychology, that is the right word I'm looking for, plays a big part in haunted objects.
Very much so. So to reiterate, this is not a haunted painting.
So,
Did anybody get it right? Spot on.
Spot on, one person. That's why I said 1%.
Okay. Are you able to divulge who that person was?
I can tell that person, that was Vivian Powell.
Vivian Powell. She got it spot on when she touched and held that painting.
Everybody else, I'm very sorry. Okay, I've got to say it, I'm very sorry to everybody that took part in this experiment. Okay? I wasn't out to fool you, I wasn't out to trick you. I just wanted to prove to myself and now the paranormal community, hopefully, I'm sorry people, if you, that psychology, me putting something into somebody's brain has extended it, that this painting is haunted. I'm not saying that every object or every painting isn't haunted.
No, but what you're saying is the psychology plays a huge part in how you perceive an object when you're told all of that before you go into, holding or trying to work with an object, how much psychology actually kicks in with that.
Yeah, basically, in a nutshell. And as I say, I apologise to the paranormal world if I've done anything wrong. I don't feel as if I have.
No, but you've proved a point in regards to how much, when you know the history or a location or anything about that, all of a sudden you then can't trust necessarily what you're feeling because your psychology then kicks in.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what I'm saying. I'm still fascinated, obviously, with the haunted object phenomena. I always have been, always will be. But it was just a theory of mine and I wanted to test it. And so it's amazing what... So doing it this way, even with the painting, through psychology, then could we actually say that because we're told that a certain location is haunted, mm-hmm. we then believe that location is haunted. Do we go in with a preconception that A is haunted because we've been told that A is haunted, B has some sort of activity, and C is not haunted at all, it has no activity?
Yeah, it has a huge amount of impact on how you approach an investigation. And then when you are using your kit to try and record what you're getting, you have to know your equipment, exactly what it is you're recording. But zoom out, look at it in a bigger picture and see if it is a logical explanation rather than, oh, well, I got told this place is haunted, so it must be the white lady that runs down the hallway because her child was ripped from her breast and thrown in the moat or something. You know what I mean? Whatever the story is behind the location, you can't take that as read. And I think that's one thing from your experiment that we can take is that don't necessarily believe the hype of a location.
This is what it is. At the end of the day, what I've given people is what they wanted to hear. Isn't it? You see where I'm coming from? They wanted to know, when I got this painting out at the beginning, they wanted, because it was done at an event, at a location that was haunted, they wanted that painting to be haunted. So then I took it to another location that was supposed to be haunted. They wanted that painting to be haunted. So, there you go.
Very, very interesting. On a personal level, was you quite disappointed by the results of that?
Yeah, I was actually, because I was actually hoping that it would have been on a 50-50 scale. But it wasn't. It was more people literally said yes, it is haunted. And as I say, I was hoping, I didn't know, obviously, I didn't know what the results were going to be, but I knew that some people were going to believe that the painting was haunted. But I didn't know the percentage was. So I was hoping that it was going to be around about a 50% either way.
Yeah. But
it wasn't. It just completely, and the percentages just kept going up and up and up and up and up. Oh wow, it's like 80 to 90% of people believe that this painting is haunted.
I wonder what does your dad make of this?
He laughed.
Did
I've actually told him, I went, thank you very much, Dad, for painting the painting for me. I've finished, and I spoke to him the other day. I said, I've basically finished the experiment. And by the way, 80 to 90% of people think that the painting's haunted. He went, well, you can tell that 80 to 90% of the people that think it's haunted, I'm not hanging it up in my house anymore.
Oh dear. So going forward with this, how much then can we trust any activity that we get if we know stuff before we go into a location? I mean, you can walk into anybody's house and get an impression from what's gone in that house. And is that because you know the people, because you're in their house and you know the history and you know this and that? It does make you wonder what your belief systems and your knowledge base is actually having an effect, doesn't it? I mean, are we actually able to be subjective and objective then when we go into an investigation? Because straight away when you go, I'm going paranormal investigating, straight away your head is in, I'm looking for a spiritual activity and ghosts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. So, with locations, especially private locations, if you do private work, I do private work. We make sure that we go in there with no prior history whatsoever. You know, we'll go and do the interviews, obviously, but you know, make sure they're not aiming short of the shilling, as we like to say. They're not high on non-prescriptive drugs and things like that. But we certainly don't go in with the history of the location, you know. So whatever we get, hopefully, then we come away from the investigation and then start looking at the history.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, though, even when you go into, say you go into like a 1970s suburban house, straight away you've got a form of history in your head without even trying, just purely on where it is and the situation. All right, you might not know the history of the land and pre that house being built there and stuff like that, but how much of that can we then discount? Because it's very difficult, isn't it? Because you can't help but get visual clues. You can't help that.
No. You're going to look at visual clues. You can't sort of... But then again, we're saying you can't look at visual clues, you can. I actually worked with a medium, and I couldn't believe it. This is way back in the early days. And he actually came to my house, and he was going to this location, and he went to me blindfold me. And I actually blindfolded him from my house to the location, and I wasn't allowed to take the blindfold off until we actually got inside the location. So he never got no visual clues whatsoever. Which at the time I thought, well, this bloke's really weird, you know. But now thinking about it, doing this experiment, I'm thinking, well, okay, he's got a point. And as you said, it's visualisation of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest one is if you go to, we'll take the suburbs of London.
Yeah.
Go to Edmonton, Enfield. Straight away, you know damn well, without even going into a house, that house could have been bombed in World War II.
Yep. Yep.
Straight away, that's in your head. Yeah. Now, where my nan lived, he actually lived in a road. There was 3 rows of houses, and a German bomber went down the middle of the road and dropped his bombs down the middle of each road. That was 3 different roads. Didn't hit one house. Blew all the windows out. He never hit one house.
Gosh,
But
that was
I knew
lucky.
that. Yeah, it was lucky. But my nan told me that. So if I was to go back, that's something that stayed in my mind. So if I was to go back to where my nan lived, for argument's sake, someone said, oh, my house is haunted, that would come back.
Yeah.
Because it's imprinted in my brain.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, when you go to we're talking about London or any of the big cities, really. When you go to somewhere like that, I mean, straight away, you know, you've got those visual. You can't help but not have those visual clues. You know, you know the eras, you know the various. Even if you're not an archaeologist, even if you're not a architect, that's the word I'm searching for. We kind of know Georgian, we kind of know Victorian, we kind of know post-war, we kind of know the rough structural outline. So those are visual clues in themselves, even if you don't know. Because we have this broad history in the UK, you kind of get an idea from these visual clues without even trying that indicates certain periods in history, whereas if you then get activity, you would make that logical, rational assumption. Yeah. Oh, I've got a Victorian ghost here. Yeah. You know, or I've got, I'm getting this, that, and the next, because you can't help but live in the UK without knowing these kind of things, quite frankly, particularly as us in the paranormal. We love our history, we love old buildings, we love, you know, you can't help but have even a basic knowledge of these things, can you?
Okay. I mean, if we're sitting there talking amongst ourselves, well, we're not talking amongst ourselves because we've got X amount of listeners. I'll say to you and the listeners out there, Whitechapel. Now, I bet you everybody straight away thought of Jack the Ripper.
Yep.
Point taken.
Exactly. It's one of those things that you all have to be aware of, and Gary's experiment has proved the psychology of knowing something, and particularly if you label it with like haunted or paranormal or activity or anything around that, you really have to be very discerning within yourself in regards to how you deal with that, and not try. It's difficult. It is one of the hardest things to do, but try to be more discerning in regards to how you investigate by taking into account visual clues or knowledge that you've got prior to working with a location or an object.
Definitely.
Anyway, on that note, we've actually come to the end of the show. God, that went quick, didn't it?
It did. Very good.
Hope you found it as interesting as I did on this particular experiment that Gary's done. Thoroughly thought it was a fascinating show of how psychology can play a part rather in regards to the paranormal. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome. And I'm going to say it again. I hope I haven't offended any paranormal researchers out there.
Well, I don't think you could have, because at the end of the day, that's what we all do. We have to do experiments to try and prove things. And sometimes we have to be a bit more, putting it out there. So anyway, on that note, thank you so much for joining us tomorrow night on Parasearch Radio, Haunted Histories with Penny G. Morgan. She is talking all about Jedburgh Castle with Mr. Ryan Griffiths in the studio. Join her at 9 p.m. tomorrow evening. Don't forget, if you've missed any of our shows, we are on YouTube. You can go over there, click like, share and subscribe. I love saying that. Keep an eye on the Parasearch Radio group page for all sorts of things that we post up throughout the day and the week on there. And thank you all for listening, and I bid you a very farewell. Good night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.